when you are in a situation where you're in a situation that maybe causes you a stressor, right? When you're in that situation, you can think about this playlist that you have and put yourself in one of those positions that brought you that joy, that brought you that confidence, right? So like when I'm gonna go speak on stage, it's normal to feel nervous, right? But instead of having a negative attachment to that nervousness, I can decide that, oh, it's the confidence in me that I'm feeling, because it's the same thing that's happening inside our body, right? My heart rate is racing, I'm getting a little jittery, right? But I can see that as a negative, or I can see that as a positive.
Hey there, thank you for tuning in to the Amberly Lago Show. Today on the show, I have one of my very special friends. She's also been in the Unstoppable Life Mastermind for almost 2 years, going on 2 years now. Jillian, thank you for being on the show. She is a transformational expert on and connecting to your heart. So if you've ever you want to make deeper connections, you want to be successful in business and in your relationship, get your notepad and your pen, because you're going to want to tune in to everything she has to say. So Jillian, thank you so much for being on the show.
Oh my goodness, I'm so excited to be here. I really do feel like this is going to be like a little bit of a roller coaster, because I mean, me and you get together and we laugh and dance, and then, you know, then we talk about some serious stuff, so it's going to be good.
Oh my goodness. And y'all, just so you know, she is the true blue. She's been on a road trip with my family.
Yes, I have. So much fun.
You've seen the real stuff, been in the car. And so you know my husband.
I do.
Our husbands get along great, because your husband is a former police officer, and so is mine. And so I couldn't wait for them to meet. But I'm just so excited to have you here. And I think so many people need to know, well, first of all, I left out something. You're an ER trauma nurse as well.
Yes.
And she has a podcast called Life Without Secrets.
Yep.
Right? Did I say that right?
You did.
Okay. That's your handle too. But so before we get started, what exactly does that mean, life without secrets? Because I always think that, we're only as sick as our secrets.
Yeah. Well, and that there's truth to that.
Yeah. And
absolutely.
So where did you come up with this life without secrets?
So there's definitely a deeper meaning behind life without secrets for my own life. But as far as a bigger picture goes, secrets create barriers in our life. They create barriers to our business and our relationships. And a lot of people think of secrets as something big, like our dirty laundry that we're hiding. But secrets can be as simple as the feelings that you really have that you aren't sharing. Right? So those feelings that are behind our doors and under our rugs and behind our screens of our phone. How do we really feel about something and what we actually need? And, I started this work with Life Without Secrets and really wanting to dive into that and wanting to bring the awareness to it, and help people live a life without secrets and help them be able to share how they really feel and what they really need, whether it's in their relationship or just with the world. And it really goes back to my own story. So I was a product of an affair. So my dad had met my mom at a bar. They started dating. My mom gets pregnant with me, and my dad's like, oops, sorry, I'm married. Yeah. And instead of that becoming like he's going to tell his wife, he decides that he's going to hide me as a secret from his family. And so I got to see my dad about once a year, because he was a truck driver and he would go around the United States and he would deliver cars. And so he'd come to where I live about once a year. And so I still saw him. I still got to have somewhat of a relationship. I still knew him. And I actually didn't know I personally was a secret until I was 11 years old. And so I actually knew about his family. I knew that I had all these brothers and sisters on his side of the family, and I would go out in the world and I would tell people, yeah, I have 7 brothers and 1 sister, and they live in Arizona, I'm gonna meet them someday, but I just haven't met them yet. And when I was 11, I became kind of an angry child. And especially at 11, I feel like it's when those emotions start coming up a lot in our lives, right? And we don't know where they're coming from, why they're there, what to do with them. And nobody ever taught me the tools on what they are and what to do with them, or asked me how I was feeling. That wasn't a part of our family. So what did your mom
say about like?
Well, so my mom she didn't tell me either. She just let me believe that, like, oh yeah, I was going to meet them someday. So when I was 11, I went to this therapist's office because I was this angry child. And the therapist found out that these people didn't know I existed, and I thought that they did. And
so they had no idea about
They had
you.
no idea I existed. And so the therapist made my mom tell me that I was actually a secret. And at that point, you would think like, oh, the secret's out, right? Like, now you can go meet your family. Well, no, me being a secret just meant that, okay, you know that you're the secret. And so you can now go with your dad in the truck, because he was a truck driver, on these commercial shoots in the summertime for a week or two and spend time with them. And then his wife would call on the phone. And it wasn't like my dad ever said like, hey, if my wife calls, you need to be quiet. I just knew how to please. And I knew that I needed to earn my love, that it wasn't something that was given freely to me. And so I would protect the relationship by people pleasing and by like, oh, it doesn't matter how I feel, right? Like I didn't even know how to identify that. And so I would stuff those things down and people please. And I ended up pregnant at 17 and had my own child. And I remember looking at my child and looking at my parents and thinking, how could you? How could you do that to your child that you love so much? And, you know, it wasn't until a few years ago that I actually did the work and why Life Without Secrets came about, so that I can help other people dive into what they're going through and be able to reveal and heal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, also too, when you were pregnant as a teenager and you had a lot of people say, well, your life's over. You're never going to amount to anything. You're never going to be successful. You are a teenager and you're having a baby. What was going through your mind at that time? And then how did you, because you accomplished something pretty remarkable, and how did you accomplish that? Yeah,
so people in high school, like teachers that I was close to, they'd be like, oh man, you had so much potential. And you know, that was the first point in my life that I knew in life we have two choices. Like when we're met with adversity, when we're met with an obstacle that we're facing, we have a choice in that matter. And at that point in my life, it was the first time where I felt like I had a choice, right? Because I didn't have a choice whether or not I was a secret, but I was like, you know what? I have a choice here. And I can become the statistic that these teachers and these people think that I'm going to be, or I can choose my own path and I will accomplish this, and I'm going to prove to them that I matter. Because I felt growing up like, oh, I just didn't matter. I didn't matter enough to be in my dad's family or be a part of that family, right? And then I'm like, I'm going to prove to the world that I do matter, and I'm not going to be that statistic. And so, yes, I became valedictorian of my college, which, you know,
that's huge.
Yeah. And it's funny though, because like, I think when we deep inside have those wounds that we haven't healed from, we are questioning our worth, right?
Yeah.
And the way that we try to heal those things from an external point of view is we either achieve or we pick up the addictions.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what I did growing up. I didn't feel worthy enough of my father's attention or even my mother's. And so I became, you know, Miss Greenville High School. I was like the honor roll president of the club. Like I was like, I achieved first place in all the track meets. I achieved all these things, but it wasn't filling the part of me that really needed to be loved and healed. Yeah. So how do you heal that?
Yeah. So I like to coach couples now, because me and my husband went into our relationship, I call it our grief cases. He had his grief case, I had my grief case. We both came from broken families, which in the beginning of a relationship, you kind of are like, oh, you can understand me.
Yeah.
Like you get it, right? And so it kind of brings you guys together. And then, you know, it doesn't feel that heavy to like, oh, I'll hold your grief case for a little while, you know, until as a couple, you start piling in more grief together. And nobody taught you how to unpack the grief case. Nobody taught you what to do with it. And so here you are, you're carrying around these grief cases. They're getting heavier and heavier as you walk through your relationship. And pretty soon the seams are ripping apart. They're getting weaker and weaker. And pretty soon it just explodes. And that's what happened in my own relationship. And so how do we do that? How do we start unpacking our grief cases and decide what drawer we're going to put it in, so when it opens, because it will, we'll know what to do with it, you know? And because it's not like our problems just disappear, like, oh, you're just going to, you know, fix it here and then they'll never see you again. No, they're going to follow you through life, but you're going to have the tools and you're going to know what to do with them. And it works in life and it works in relationships. And so I've created a method. It's called the Truthful method that I walk my clients through. And it's an 8-week transformational program, and we'll walk through the first step because I think that like this is so important for everybody to learn, and I truly feel like not enough people understand this. A lot of people will say like, hey, your thoughts create your life, right? And I really think that it's so much deeper than that. Like if we aren't changing our emotions, you're not going to change your life. And emotions affect our physiology more than our thoughts. And our heart actually creates a rhythm. Like people study heart rate variability now. Well, based on your heart rate variability or based on your emotion, it affects your heart rate variability. And so if we're living in stress, right, stress is a surface level thing that we say. We need to get to what are the stressors. So the first thing we walk through is like, where are we right now on an emotional level? Like, where are we? And in order to figure that out, we go through a process. So I walk people through like, get out a piece of paper. I want you to write down stressors that are going on in your life right now. Is it your finances? Is it your relationship? Is it your workload? Is it your teenager? You know, what is it? And then next to that, you're going to write what that situation makes you feel. What emotion is it? And for me, I was never taught like how to express my emotions, or I was never taught like,
well, you were used to having to stuff it down and hide and act like everything was okay fine. And people please.
Exactly. And I mean, how often, especially in the world today, we do that so much because there's so much rushed energy in the world where there's like emails and text messages and social media, right? Like we have things coming at us all the time. So I think, you know, even though people understand this a little bit, they're not actually doing it and participating in it because of all the rushed energy that we have in the world today. So I teach people to slow down, do the stressors. So document the stressors. Next to the stressor, you're going to put what emotion does that stressor produce inside of you, and get out a piece of paper with 100 emotions. I have one in the back of my magazine. It has a list of emotion, or you can go online and just Google it, 100 list of emotions.
What is your magazine? Tell everybody what's your magazine.
Yes, it's called the Truthful magazine, and you can actually download it for free right now. I have it on my website. So just go to lifewithoutsecrets.com. and you can download the magazine for free right now. So definitely do that. And in the back of the magazine, you can find the list of emotions for you. And I want you to look at those when you're looking at your stressor. When you write down that stressor, look at those emotions and really identify what is it? What is it that I'm feeling? Because we can't just say, you know, oh, I'm stressed, or I'm tired. Those are surface level and we're not getting to the root of the problem. So what happens is you'll do stressor, then you'll do the emotional reaction that you have. And then next to that, you're going to put, what do you normally do when those situations occur? Do you blame? Do you push through? Do you avoid? You know, what is your reaction to the stressor?
Yeah, because everybody does something different. For me, I tend to push through.
Me too.
Yeah, push through. But then I know other people in my family that just ignore.
Yeah.
And it's like they've got blinders on, and there could be, you know, they ignore the white elephant in the room and just ignore. And I'm like, no, I want to like talk about it, but I also push through. Like a lot.
And what you'll notice when you start doing this exercise is that normally you'll find that like one or two emotions will stand out the most. Yeah. And that is building a recognition system for you, because what are our brains? Our brains are pattern recognition systems, right? And so by developing this awareness, you're going to be able to do something about it. So the next step we go to is like, okay, So we know what these stressors are in your life, but what is it in your day-to-day life that renews you, that re-energizes you, that brings you joy, that makes you feel positive emotions like love, kindness, courage, confidence? What are those situations or people that bring that to you, right? So we document what is the situation, what is the positive experience that you had, and then you go back to your list of emotions and you pick out the positive emotion that went with it. And what are we doing? We're creating an emotional playlist, because how many times have you gotten in your car and you're like, I really need like a pick-me-up, right? And you hit play on your favorite playlist in your car, and all of a sudden you feel like, okay, the day's better now. Right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And so by doing this, we can create our own emotional playlist. And so when you are in a situation where you're in a situation that maybe causes you a stressor, right? When you're in that situation, you can think about this playlist that you have and put yourself in one of those positions that brought you that joy, that brought you that confidence, right? So like when I'm going to go speak on stage, it's normal to feel nervous, right? But instead of having a negative attachment to that nervousness, I can decide that, oh, it's the confidence in me that I'm feeling, because it's the same thing that's happening inside our body, right? My heart rate is racing, I'm getting a little jittery, right? But I can see that as a negative, or I can see that as a positive. Like, it's confidence.
I just had a conversation with a new doctor that I'm seeing today. And he said, well, have you started your treatment yet? And I said, well, I'm really scared, so I haven't tried it yet. I've got to wait until I have some time off. I said, but I'm switching that feeling to I'm excited to try it instead of I'm scared, because it's the same kind of emotion.
Yes.
But it's hard.
Yeah, and it's not
hard.
easy. And it's just like anything though, right? Like we have to develop a pattern so our brain can recognize it, right? And I lived my life through a lens of I don't matter for almost all my life at this point, right? And just until a few years ago when I realized like I don't have to wear that lens.
Yeah.
And now I can like my husband could do, you know, my husband, he's like the best guy ever, and we've done so much work, but like he could have done 100 things right, and I would have seen the 2 things that told me I didn't matter, because that's what my brain was looking for, and it just wants to prove that you're right. And so if you develop a different pattern where you're looking for the positive, and you know, it's not just about the thought though, and that's what I want to bring up here. Like a lot of people will say like, well, you just have to say.
It's just about mindset.
It's just about mindset.
It's how you feel.
It's deeper.
The emotion behind it.
Yes, because your emotions will control everything else in your body. And so if you're not putting an emotion to that thought, if you're not having that emotion change that, then you're not going to change your life. You're not going to change your relationship. And in order to do that, we have to get to the bottom of really what's causing that emotion. And how can we change it? And how can we verbalize how we feel and get to where we get what we need?
Well, how did you start to change that relationship? Well, that's one thing I want to talk to you about. I know we're running out of time, but I just wanted to talk to you about like you with your husband, y'all have really changed your relationship and how you communicate.
Yeah.
And you've told me before that, that you didn't understand why he was so into these self-development conferences and masterminds and this and that. And then you started getting into it, and it's just made your marriage get even stronger and better.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm asking is because selfishly, my husband is like ex-cop, like very just black and white, he didn't even come to my own event. Like he came to help clean up, but he's just not into that sort of thing.
Yeah.
How did you start to transition to be more open to go into that as far as like learning and growing with your husband?
Yeah. So I used to think, and I can totally relate to your husband in this too, because as an ER nurse, like I used to be like, oh yeah, you help people. I save lives for a living. Like, okay, like good for you.
And I could see where that would,
just, honestly.
Yeah, I could see where that would be
the mentality.
Yeah.
And then he'd come home and everything would just be so positive. And I was over here thinking like, oh my God, our relationship like it sucks right now. Like,
you're so positive. Do you know I saved somebody's life today?
And honestly, it was like I almost wore like it like a badge of honor, right? Of like you know, I didn't need to like feel all these mushy things in order to have a good life, you know? And so like I had this wall between me and emotions.
Yeah.
And so like going into a room where like, oh, you were digging into your emotions, you were around other emotional people, and you were like changing your life and creating this positivity, which is really what happens at these events, you know, like it's amazing. Like, and I think everybody should go immerse themselves in it.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. We've got a studio audience today.
I know, I'm so excited.
We've got a studio audience today.
I feel so loved. I have to just point that out.
Yeah, we have a studio audience today. People that have traveled from far away to be here to see you, Jillian.
So far.
Yeah.
I feel so honored. But yeah, I had a barrier up, and I wore it like a badge, to be honest with you. Like I thought like I was so good at my job because I didn't let those things affect me. But what the truth of the matter is we think those things aren't affecting us, but oftentimes when we aren't actually digging those things up, they're coming out in the effects on our relationships.
Yeah.
They are coming out in our health, right? And so they will show their face if we don't get to the bottom of them.
It's crazy.
And it won't be in the way that we think usually, right?
Yeah,
and
I
until
mean,
you connect the dots, you don't know.
I remember I had a panic attack. I didn't even know what that was. And I was like, I'm fine. Like, why am I having a panic attack? You know, I was about to get on a train and leaving a conference that I had spoken at. And in this cafe, I was going to get something to eat. I had a panic attack. And I mean, I'd never had anything like this before. Blacked out, like sweated, like drenched, not just a little glisten, but like full on drenched sweating. So much so that the people behind the counter of the restaurant came out and they were about ready to call the paramedics. I thought maybe I was having a heart attack. It was a panic attack. And I had to go, what is going on? Like, what am I stuffing down so much that this is happening?
Yeah.
Because there's that saying that there's that book, Your Body Keeps Score. It does.
Yeah, absolutely.
It does.
And, you know, many times, and I actually relate more to men in this way, which is interesting. Like 75% of men have like more of an avoidant attachment style. And I just happen to be like the 25% of females that carried that in my life, which is interesting. So I can relate, I feel like, to a lot more men in that way of like what that feels like and why we avoid situations, right? And a lot of it is just like protecting us. It's a protection, it's a barrier that we create around us, most likely coming from our family of origin, where whether we know it or not, it usually stems that deep because it's just a safety and security. And if we don't have a safety and security, then we won't walk in a room and experience love and belonging, because it has to come first. You have to feel safe in yourself and your ability to handle emotions.
We all just want to be loved and feel like we belong and a part of, and I think that's human nature.
It is, but in order to be able to accept it, you know, it's easier, I think, to give it when we're missing it, but in order to truly accept the love and belonging, we have to feel the safety and security, and oftentimes that's comes with vulnerability, even though that's like the scariest part, right? It seems like, oh gosh, I wouldn't want to do that. And then for me, it was like, you know, I actually, this is funny, you're talking about going to events and, you know, how your husband didn't go. I remember getting into my personal development journey. It was after I went to therapy and started like going to therapy with my list of 100 emotions. Like, okay, how do I really feel? And then the first event I did, and I didn't tell my husband, actually.
Really?
Yeah, and it was a Tony Robbins event that I could do from my home, that like Unleash the Power Within. And I did it from home.
Sarah and I have been to a Tony Robbins event together, and it was amazing.
It's I did the one online, and I like took a bunch of notes and I got all into it in my house. It was actually like when COVID first started.
Oh, really? That wasn't long ago.
No, 4 years. That was my first like stepping into the event space, like after going through therapy. And like I had been to events.
In 2020.
I had been to events, but I hadn't like worked through the event. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like there's a difference. Like you can attend just to attend, but if you actually want to apply it, you know, and actually ask for it on an internal level, you have to do the work, right? So, so I did the Tony Robbins event, and I remember my husband coming home one time and he's like, what is she doing up there? Because I was like yelling and like,
really?
Oh yeah. And I wrote all these
you
notes.
should have seen Sarah and I yelling and screaming, and then the next day we were like, are you tired? Yeah, I'm tired. Yeah.
Well, and you know what? I walked away going, how come everybody doesn't know this stuff? Right?
Wow.
Like this is everybody needs to know how to heal. Everybody needs to know tools, and maybe like that tool isn't for you, but the next one will be.
Yeah.
And like the more tools you have in your tool belt, like the more you're going to be able to go through life. And when you meet those obstacles, because that's the only thing that we can ever guarantee, like in life, like you can try to like manifest and predict your future, but at the end of the day, the only thing you can guarantee is you're going to hit an obstacle in the next 365 days. I guarantee you.
Yeah.
Big or small. And so in order to get through life, as many tools you can develop and put in your tool belt, like to face those obstacles, the better, right?
Yeah.
And I had to learn that the hard way, but I'm so happy that I did, and then I get to teach other people the tools that I have now.
Yeah.
So it's really cool.
That's awesome. So we're going to do something that we've never done before here on the Amberly Lago Show.
I like this.
Okay?
Okay.
Because we have a studio audience because you're so popular. We've got people that have traveled from far and wide to be here just to see Jillian.
Oh my goodness.
Do we have a question from the studio audience? Anybody have a question?
Yeah.
Sarah Delane, do you have a question?
You should have your questions prepped.
You didn't prep your question? I know this is so on the spot, and I love it.
I know. Christina Deering has a question.
Yeah. So how have you noticed this truthful process that you've created? What is the biggest impact that it's had on your life and potentially a client's life as well? I just love to hear kind of how that translated into results and into like a deeper level of just being in their body.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, so the question was, in case you couldn't hear it, like what is the deepest impact really that what you teach has had on your client's life and your life and your relationship? I mean, I see your relationship. It's just, I love the relationship you and your husband have. It's beautiful. And your hubby is so amazing.
He is.
Like,
He is so amazing. And you know what is the best thing is like I'm like a living proof. Like, I mean, I like to get vulnerable because I think that and share our story and its struggles. Like we share so many struggles in our program because that's really how we heal, right? Because when we think we're alone, we'll still hide behind our doors and under our rugs and behind our screen. But this minute we know that like we'll be accepted for the struggles we've been through in our relationship, no matter what those look like, that's when we can start opening up the secrets, I call them, or the struggles that we're having, and then we can actually dive deeper and not stay on a surface level. And so the program is really to dive deep into those things. And just to give you, like, from my relationship, like I actually looked for validation outside of my marriage before we started this healing journey, and that was when our grief cases really exploded. And I say that, and I can say that freely because I know that somebody listening is going to like, oh my gosh, maybe there is somebody else out there that can help me because I'm going through that too. And,
like when you say external validation, what did that look like?
So I was having like a intimate relationship at my work with another person. And, our relationship prior to being married, my husband had done some things as well in our relationship because we were both broken people. And so I love when you say like, like how amazing, like you talk about our relationship, and that's the testament. Like when you see us, you would never guess what we've been through. And I mean, and
how much your husband just, he talks so highly of you, and I mean, he speaks so highly of you, and he supports you. And I remember when I first met you, he was like, oh yeah, you need to be in her mastermind. I completely support you being in her mastermind, which you know, a lot of husbands would be like, oh, you don't need to spend the money. You don't need that. You don't need to buy that. You don't need to go being part of that. Or he was like, yep. Yeah. This is what you need to do. He was so supportive.
Well, and I think also, like, especially in this space, like, there's a lot of go-getters, right? And like, this is what I see that happens so much is that, you know, somebody's going after their dreams, and then the spouse is here, and then there is a misunderstanding, and the couple is not on the same page, and so they're doing circles like this, and I'm holding up my fingers if you're listening to this, and there's two separate circles happening instead of one circle that you guys are working on together. And so like, and we understand we are both two people with passion and purpose, and we're both super driven, which is what attracted us to each other as well.
You know, I should have had him come on too.
I know, he would love that. But we'd probably be here for 2 hours.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again.
And so like helping people, like you don't have to sacrifice your personal success and happiness to be in a good relationship. You know, like those you can have both, and I want to teach you how. You know, and a lot of it is like diving deep and being able to not just speak on a surface level, like, I'm tired. Do I have to do this? You know, it's like, well, what does that mean? What is tired? Like, what's really going on? And so in the magazine, I talk about resilience and, you know, what resilience really is. And I love actually when I'm speaking to like ask people in the audience, like, what does it mean to be resilient? And most people,
what does it mean to be resilient, Kelly? We got an audience.
Here we go. We have an audience.
Kelly Kilpatrick is in the audience.
Although she's so close to me, she might.
I think that when you look at Jillian, it's the epitome of resilience.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And so, and when I think of Jillian, the stories that she tells, it starts with courage to be truthful about what you're experiencing. I think that's the first step with resilience.
Yeah. And
courage to be truthful.
Yeah. And Kelly knows me so well. But most of the time, what I hear in an audience is that they say, oh, I just have to push through. I just have to be strong. Well, what does your relationship look like if all you're doing is pushing through and being strong, right? It looks tired.
Yeah.
Right? And so resilience is actually the amount of energy you have inside of you to show up, to prepare for, to adapt to recover from when your relationship is faced with stressful situations. And so at the end of the day, when all we're saying to our spouse is, I'm tired, well, how can we change that? How can we create more energy inside of you to show up at the end of the day to your relationship? You know, that's what it means to be resilient in your relationship.
That's so good, especially for a lasting relationship.
Yeah.
Johnny
and that's what we want, right?
Yeah. Johnny and I are going up on 20 years soon.
That's so good.
Yeah. Well, oh my goodness. I got to have you back on the show with your husband. We are out of time.
It'd be super fun.
Oh, I know. Yeah. I could just talk to you for on and on and on. We could go on and on. What's the best way for people to find your magazine, to find you and follow you, and also listen to your podcast? Y'all tune in to Life Without Secrets, her podcast, her page, Life Without Secrets, on Instagram. But tell everybody the best way to find you.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm on Instagram the most. So it's the Life Without Secrets podcast. That's the Instagram I use because my original one got taken over by Instagram. They're like, you're pretending to be someone else. I'm like, thank you for noticing my change. So you can mostly talk to me on like DMs on Life Without Secrets podcast. My website is lifewithoutsecrets.com. So you can find my course on there if you're interested in taking it with your spouse. And then you can also download the magazine for free right now off my website. Yeah, so go check it out.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank y'all so much for tuning in. Take a screenshot and tag me at Amberly Lago Motivation and Jillian at Life Without Secrets. And when I see you tag that on Instagram, I always repost it on my story as well. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.